Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a seriously fascinating slice of intellectual history. We're going to explore two profound Korean philosophical concepts that emerged in the 19th and early 20th centuries, Donghak and Daesun thought. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth are we looking at historical theology today? Well, because these ideas actually offer a surprisingly fresh, even radical, perspective on how we interact with the physical world right now.
I know, it sounds like a bit of a stretch, right? Can 19th century Korean philosophy actually help us solve today's ecological crisis? As we're going to see, this massive historical shift in Korean religious thought, moving from a strictly heaven-centered worldview to a profoundly earth-centered one, gives us this incredibly powerful lens for looking at our modern relationship with the planet. We're going to see exactly how deeply held beliefs about the cosmos can literally alter how humans treat the dirt beneath their feet. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by defining two key views of the Earth, touch upon traditional concepts of ghosts and heaven, and then unpack Donghak's idea of fruitless effort. From there, we'll explore Daesun's concept of heaven and earth, see how these worldviews dictated real-world practice, and finally, connect all of this to our modern ecological crisis. Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, Two Views of Earth, laying the foundation. So, the very first concept we need to wrap our heads around is Noma Gong. This is an absolute cornerstone of Donghak thought, and it translates basically to I tried but didn't succeed, or effortless effort. It describes the state where immense effort was put in, even divine effort from heaven itself, but ultimately there were zero successful results. So you can think of it as a philosophy marked by a really profound, fundamental cosmic frustration. Now, in stark contrast to No Mugong, we have Cheonji Songgong, which is central to Daesun thought. This translates literally to the success of heaven and earth. So instead of that fruitless effort we just talked about, this concept envisions heaven and earth actively dividing up roles to get work done together. It totally focuses on realizing a successful heaven right here on earth through the harmony of yin and yang. It's a huge, fascinating shift from heavenly failure to earthly triumph. Which brings us to Section 2, Traditional Ghosts and Heaven, a conceptual clash. To really grasp why this clash was such a big deal, we have to look back at the traditional Neo-Confucian view championed by Zhu Zi. He basically argued that anything to do with ghosts was inherently the enemy of reason. They were formless, they had no shadow, they just didn't make sense. But Donghak thought it completely flipped that idea on its head. In Donghak, ghosts aren't just, spooky anomalies you avoid in the dark. Heaven itself is actually realized as a ghost acting from outside the world. The Lord, the Creator, is fundamentally understood as this divine ghost. Let's see how this builds into Section 3, Donghak's fruitless effort, the heavenly struggle. Because Donghak ideology recognized the heavenly Lord as a ghost residing completely outside the world, any efforts made by this Lord in the earthly realm were ultimately seen as fruitless. The effort was definitely there, but the earthly realization was just totally missing. It was a very heaven-centered ideology, where the earth itself was, frankly, almost an afterthought. And that directly leads to this inescapable conclusion of, I tried, but didn't succeed. But wait, we definitely shouldn't view this as just a historical dead end. Noe is actually the crucial gateway here. You absolutely cannot understand the harmonious success that later philosophies proposed without first understanding this specific phase of fruitless effort. This theological frustration was a totally necessary stepping stone in modern Korean thought. It essentially pointed out that a heaven-only approach simply wasn't cutting it. Moving right along to Section 4, Daesun's Heaven and Earth, an active partnership. Now, what is really fascinating here is how Daesun thought comes in and fundamentally alters the entire equation. Cheonji Songgong introduces the idea that heaven and earth actively divide their roles. They actually accomplish work together. So it's no longer just some distant ghost trying to influence a passive earth. The earth suddenly becomes an active, vital partner in the whole cosmic plan. And this leads to a really profound utopian shift. As the text outlines, it's about realizing heaven on earth through the harmony of yin and yang between earth and sky. Success isn't just about trying to get to heaven anymore, it's about literally building heaven right here on the material plane by bringing the sky and the earth into perfect balance. And the incredible thing is, they didn't just speak in metaphors. They mapped this earthly view directly onto physical geography. Daesun thought placed Earth squarely at the center of the yin-yang in 5 phases. They focused on refining actual physical locations like the parent mountains of Hoimun and Moak. They even mapped out and aligned the geographic acupoints of the Mountain King and Sea King, physically adjusting the ground energy to transform negative forces into positive ones. It's essentially 19th century cosmic engineering. They were literally trying to retune the Earth's energy. All right, Section 5, Worldviews in Practice, Real-World Actions. In practice, these ideas created a really stark juxtaposition in how these groups actually operated in society. Because Donghak was so heaven-centered, their earthly energy was channeled into intense hostility toward Japanese invaders. They took a huge amount of pride in anti-Japanese martial arts. Daesun, on the other hand, was entirely Earth-focused on this grand cosmic engineering we just talked about. So they actually instructed followers to simply obey and wait, prophesying that Japan would eventually be defeated and return home completely empty-handed. It's wild to see two totally different real-world strategies born from two totally different views of heaven and earth. So the really crucial takeaway here is that cosmology is never just theoretical. Your view of the universe, your view of heaven, your view of the earth, it directly dictates practical human behavior. For these groups, it influenced absolutely everything, from how they organically farmed their land to how they engaged in national defense strategies. Which brings us to our final section, number 6, our modern ecological crisis, applying the past. This history ultimately provides, quote, a philosophical foundation for rediscovering the earthly world and re-examining the meaning of harmonious heaven on earth in the face of the modern ecological crisis and the limitations of material civilization. Think about it. If we look at the world today as a place of noimang, where we apply endless technological effort but are kind of failing to save the planet from our own ecological crisis, we can actually learn a lot from this historical shift toward Cheonji Sanggong. It offers us a real framework for respecting the earth as an active, equal partner, rather than just a passive object, and it reminds us of the absolute limits of our material civilization. So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. How can we apply this harmony of heaven and earth to overcome the very real limits of our own material civilization today? If we genuinely want our successful Earth, maybe we need to stop looking at the planet as just a passive resource to be conquered by human effort and start seeing it as a necessary partner in creating our own modern heaven on Earth. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer today, and I'll catch you next time.